Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Daily Sib. I've had a hell of a morning. The wheelchair needed a service and new tyres and all sorts of glitches, which I'm glad to say are all fixed. But it's been quite a full-on morning already. But still managed to make it in time for today's interview. And I'm joined by Peter Spate and Steve Pearson from Smart Technology, and we're going to be talking about, in a way, different problems that different parts of the disabled community face in everyday life, but the work that they're doing around solutions, and obviously particularly technology solutions. And I've used on the little words at the bottom about co-producing, and just to clarify, as we were clarifying before we went live, for me, co-producing is just including disabled people in the solutions. It's not always been done that way, and I think it's amazing that companies like Smart Technology are very much looking to disabled people to understand the real difficulties we have each day, and the other things, that the technology solutions that come out of that. So without further ado, we'll welcome our guests in. So hello, Peter. Good to see you, Peter, first of all.
Martin.
And Steve, good to have you on. And Steve, I think you're going to be kicking us off with a bit of a sort of the backstory and what you're doing as a company, and just a bit more detail as to my introduction, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's great, Martin. Thanks very much. First of all, Smart Technology, we develop really clever solutions and some of the most life-enhancing, life-changing solutions for different disability groups. Initially, we started off developing products and systems for visually impaired people. Peter is actually registered blind, and so Peter guides us in terms of what's required and what's needed by visually impaired people, and has got very good contacts with the visually impaired community. But also, as the Disability Engagement Director, Peter's role is to actually engage with other disabilities, which he does a great job of, and certainly helps us define what we need, or what mobility and other disability users need in terms of products to help them enhance their daily lives. So to start off, what I'm going to look at is the sort of visually impaired community. So we developed some products for visually impaired people, and we have a range of products, some infrastructure and some end user. So in terms of the end user, we have a smart cane, or we've got 3 smart canes actually in development, and the smart canes are for people who have the need to have a blind cane, or a long cane, a white cane, and use it. And this has got clever electronic technology in it, a variety of different sensors to engage with the user. The users wear a small over-ear earpiece, sort of like this one. So literally, it just goes over the ear. So
sort of like a hearing aid, yeah?
Yeah, sort of like a hearing aid. So they can still hear everything else that's going on around them there, but they also hear the messages from our smart systems. And that's really important, because for visually impaired people, hearing is believing. Having lost the sense of sight, for them, they rely a lot more on their audible sense, and so hearing is believing. So as well as the smart cane, we've also developed something which we call smart shoe. So this is an insole here. It's a pair of insoles which go inside a person's shoes, and these are for people who don't need the use of a cane. They can walk along looking quite normal, like everybody else, and blend in with everybody else, yet they're receiving signals from some of the sensors. So to give you an example then of how this system works, we've created a unique way of embedding passive sensors, so they don't need any power, into concrete. Okay, so this is just a concrete flagstone that you can see here.
I love the prop, by the way, Steve. Very
You love the prop, right? So it's a concrete flagstone, but what we could do using the smart shoe, if I then just pass it in front of the flagstone, you will hear sort of the response that you get.
Warning, curb edge. There is an island in the middle of the road.
Okay, so when somebody gets to a pedestrian crossing, as they're walking along, now what it's also done, I'm going to turn the camera around, is activate.
Crossing is activated. Please wait to cross.
Pedestrian crossing traffic lights automatically. So you can see the red button at the bottom has been
Warning,
pressed.
curb edge.
And I didn't leave my
There is an island in the middle of the road.
I've just sort of put it in front of it again, so the sensor's just gone on again, and it's running through its sequence now. And so I'm just going to...
Green man active. Please take care as you cross.
So you can hear it's now telling green man active, please take care as you cross.
I was going to say, well, it was...
Green man active. Please take care as you cross.
I can't stop it once it starts. It's just going to go through its...
Red man active. Do not cross. Red man active. Do not cross.
Okay, so you can see how extremely useful that is for a visually impaired person. When they go to a traffic lights and they first of all feel the bump on the ground at the pedestrian crossing, in their earpiece they get a message saying pedestrian crossing left. They turn left, walk towards the curb, and then they hear the message that you heard there, warning curb edge, there's an island in the middle of the road. It automatically presses the button for them, so they don't have to try and work their way to go to where the traffic light push button is and press it and feel the little Twizzler tactile underneath. And they get the message, and only they hear it. Nobody else around them hears it. Only they hear it. So they know the crossing's been activated. They know that the green man's now active. They could cross, and they know that the red man's then active and not to cross.
Amazing.
So how much more life enhancing is that for a visually impaired person to be able to be told sort of how to cross the road, or certainly when it's safe to cross the road? Smart button and smart switch. Smart switch is the unit fit inside the traffic lights that you say there. That also has a beacon, a Bluetooth beacon as part of it. So when they're walking down the street towards the traffic lights, towards pedestrian crossing, before getting there, they will hear in their earpiece approaching Smith Street pedestrian crossing. So they know that they're now approaching that crossing, and that might be the one that they're looking to actually use. Also, these devices work with other smart devices we've created, such as smart beacon. So this is a solar-powered unit here, which mounts on a wall, and we have another sort of smart beacon unit which bolts to a lamppost or something like that. And this is used for wayfinding. So when a visually impaired person's walking along in the street, they would...
Junction of George Street and Cookson Street.
So it tells them that they're approaching a junction.
Junction of George Street and Cookson Street.
Okay, so they now know where they are, because one of the problems that the feedback we have from the various different focus groups that we've dealt with, the visually impaired people, is that they don't know where they are a lot of the time, and it's really useful to know where they are. We've also created an app for them. So we've got Smart App VI, and that has a number of different functions on there. One of the functions is a menu. So the menu, when you press it on your smart ken, gives you a number of options. One is navigation. So it will ask you which function do you require: navigation, telephone, where am I, smart shop beacons, and so on. So there's a number of different functions. If they select navigation, it's a built-in sat nav in the app, which talks to them via the earpiece, and it's voice controlled for somebody who's visually impaired. They can store 10 preset locations from it. So most visually impaired people, when they're taught by the rover groups how to use the blind ken, they're generally shown 2, maybe 3 different routes that they can go, and that's very restricting for people to be able to have the freedom to go out places. They may be shown where the local shop is, where the post office is, and maybe the doctors, and that's about it. And 48% of visually impaired people don't leave their homes unaccompanied. And when you've got 2 million visually impaired people out there, that's a lot of people who are prisoners in their own homes, really. So with this system, with the navigation, it lets them save a number of preset locations to guide them to, or it asks them, or do you want a new location? So they can just speak the new location, and Google Maps will actually identify that location and then guide them there. It also allows them to use the telephone without having to get their phone out, because again, it will store 10 preset favorite numbers. So again, they only need to say, it'll read out the list, and it might be Martin Sibley, number 2, Martin Sibley, and you say number 2, and it'll ring in Martin Sibley. So it'll ring through on there. They can also find where they are. So if they select the menu function, which is where am I, it will tell them you are on Smith Street traveling north. so they know where their location is. And another beacon that we've created is called Smart Shop Beacon. So this is a small sort of beacon like this, and this goes inside a shop window. So when a visually impaired person's walking down the high street, it will tell them each shop they're going past, because the beacon will transmit that information. So
Yeah.
Boots Chemist, Greg's Bakery, WH Smith's, so they know the shops that they're going past. Now, the menu will allow them to turn that type of beacon on and off, because you don't necessarily want to listen to every shop you're walking past when you're walking down the street. So what you'll do, the navigation feature will guide you to the street which you want to go to, which you know that WH Smith's is on. And then when you get to that street, you can then turn on the shop function. So as you're walking down, it will tell you each shop that you're going to. So this again enhances the lives for somebody who's visually impaired.
Yeah.
So moving on to mobility issues now. So
just 1 second. Steve. I know we've got quite a lot of different products and demos to get through, so we won't stay too long on it. But I just wanted to clarify. The thing I love about the latter parts you're talking about is obviously that there's already the tech and the software and the information available, like with Google Maps. So in the sense of knowing where you are, like between two streets and all that stuff, it's there, isn't it? It's just being able to bring it to the visually impaired community in a more practical and user-friendly way, right? So that's just brilliant. And on the hardware side, that first example, and maybe we'll bring Peter in just to give that example. I think Peter's got someone in the room with him. Don't worry, Peter, don't worry. But partly it'd be good just to hear a couple of bits about your role at the company, Peter, but also that idea about crossing the road. I just think it'd be great to hear a sort of example from your perspective, but how that works as well, if that's okay, Peter.
That's absolutely fine. I'm not too bad. I'm registered blind, but I've got some vision. I'm fortunate in that. But it is restricting because I cannot even see a double-decker bus more than, say, 20 yards in front of me.
Yeah.
So, I listen. I use my hearing a lot more than. Sorry, my son keeps coming in.
Right.
I'm using my hearing a lot more than most people do.
Yeah.
Whereas this technology will certainly help with that, because I'll be able to use my hearing to get the background noise that I need, i.e. traffic coming, etc. But it will indicate exactly what colour the light's on, because I cannot see what colour the light is on.
Yeah.
I judge from the traffic slowing down or an available space, etc. when it's safe to cross. So it's safe in inverted commas.
Sure.
So this is going to be a tremendous asset for me. And like I said, I'm quite fortunate. For people who are totally blind, of whom I know many, then it's going to be a godsend for them.
And so your role at the company is sort of being able to bring, in this instance, blind people, visually impaired people, to sort of understand with the pedestrian crossing, for example, what those worries and stresses and problems and anxieties are, so that you can make sure the solution is suitable for them in an actual practical day-to-day way as well, right?
Exactly. And as well as that, Martin, we'll listen to people's needs. No two people are alike. So what bothers me, what troubles me, what won't necessarily trouble somebody else. But if we can get a wide variety of potential problems, then we can look for a solution which will fix most. It won't solve everyone's problems, but it'll solve the majority. So that's what we're aiming to do. And like Steve will go on to tell you shortly, this technology is also adaptable to many other disability groups as well. So I'll pass you back to Steve. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, I just wanted to bring you in a bit there as well, Peter. But don't worry about the family coming in. It's the beauty of working from home. It's happening to everybody.
Oh, no, yeah.
And then just one more question on that one, Steve, was that so you've got the cane or the shoe, which essentially is interacting with different sort of other bits of hardware. So like when you were saying about approaching the pedestrian crossing, is it that there was something inside that concrete as opposed to it knowing that it was the type of material at a pedestrian crossing. There was an actual bit of hardware inside the concrete. Is that right?
Yeah, there's two things there, Martin. One is a beacon.
Yeah.
So it's a Bluetooth beacon which announces that you're approaching the crossing. So that's before you get there. You hear it. You're sort of 10, 15 meters away, and you now know you're crossing. And then we've developed a unique sensor, which is, this gives you an idea. It's a flexible sensor, and this is embedded in a resin. So if I show you on a, so it's behind a resin. So it's like a painted on strip of resin, which runs around the perimeter of the crossing. So as they go onto the crossing, it then gives that information. It's all reprogrammable as well. So we can change the messages there remotely as required, which is extremely useful. But another thing I forgot to mention there on the beacons, we've also developed a beacon which is a smart toilet beacon. So, and which is particularly useful in the current state with the COVID world, in that a blind person going into a toilet, a disabled toilet, would probably have to feel around to find where the sink is, where the dryer is, where the toilets are. And they don't want to put their hands on all the surfaces in there. So the smart toilet beacon, as they walk in, will say, "Welcome to disabled toilets. The sink is on your right. To the left of the sink is a hand dryer. Far left corner is the toilet. To the right-hand side of the toilet is the toilet roll," and that sort of thing. So it describes it to them. So it's like having somebody sat on the shoulder, giving them a description as to what their surroundings are.
Oh, that's brilliant. And how would this stuff be, I don't know if installed is the right word, but like, so with the pedestrian crossing, would that be the sort of local council that would be responsible for purchasing and putting that technology in place?
It is, yes. So the infrastructure side of it, so the sensors in the crossing.
When you said infrastructure, that was the sort of public property, whereas direct to consumer would be potentially like the cane or the info. Got ya. Yeah.
So the infrastructure, the smart switch inside the traffic lights, the smart beacons around the streets, the smart crossings in the crossings and so on, those are all infrastructure. So those are local authorities or private shops to actually sort of install those. And they're very low cost. This really isn't expensive. We're keeping the prices extremely affordable, which allows everybody to benefit from this technology, which is what we're looking to do.
Yeah, well, we talk a lot on the show about business and entrepreneurship, because at the end of the day, you know, businesses still have to pay the salaries and businesses are set up to make a profit. And so I'd imagine the business model is that while they're not extortionately expensive, it's a scale, isn't it? That if every town and every city were to have them, then for you as a business, it would, you know, help to grow and make more impact as a business as well.
Yeah, as an example, the smart cane, for instance, or the smart shoes, are around about £75 to £85,
right? Yeah,
which is really affordable.
And
somebody to actually sort of have that technology and the ability to actually sort of use that.
Cool. I think I know there's a few other bits we're going to move on to. There was something I was going to ask you about that as well. We can always come back to. But yeah, if you want to crack on with the next, I'm loving this demo interactivity. It's brilliant.
So we're going to the next disability group. So the mobility issues. So for people with mobility issues, what we've created for the traffic lights is a smart button, which is this little unit here, which basically just sits on the handlebar. So it just wraps around. There is a band which goes around. So if this was the handlebar of a mobility scooter or a wheelchair, so somebody may only have the use of one arm, one hand to actually work their electric mobility scooter, this just goes down by there. And what happens here is that, and I'm going to turn towards the traffic lights again. So when somebody with the on a mobility scooter or in a motorized wheelchair, or even with a Zimmer frame approaches the crossing, what they do is when they get onto the crossing, they, instead of having to maneuver around to get towards the button, to press the button on the crossing,
I can't even actually reach up to the button as well. So yeah, exactly.
So they just press this button here, and you'll see that the lights actually lit up on the traffic lights at the bottom. Yep. So they haven't had to go anywhere near that traffic light now to actually activate the button. They're just on the crossing. They press the buttons on their handlebar, and the light goes through the change sequence. So initially, it's just like pressing the button on it, except again in this COVID world, you don't have to touch the buttons. You've actually got your own personalized button. The light then changes to green, goes through the sequence, and then changes back to red. And so how much more useful is that for somebody like yourself who admitted you can't even reach the buttons, for you to actually have the freedom to go up to a crossing, just press your own personalized button on your wheelchair, scooter, whatever it is that you're on, and have the lights change like that. So again, extremely useful for somebody who's got mobility issues. We've got another version for it's called Smart Pram. So the Smart Pram system, this allows people with prams and buggies, because it's quite awkward if a parent has got a kid in a buggy and a couple of children hanging on the side to actually go towards the curb edge. Sometimes you end up having to push the buggy out into the road or very close to the road to be able to reach the button to press it. So again, they can just stand back a metre or so back from the curb, nice and safely with the children, and just press this button on their handles of the buggy or the pram, and actually change the traffic lights. Okay.
Brilliant.
Now we developed another version of the Smart Switch. So that's the Smart Switch bit, which is built into the traffic light control unit, called Smart Switch Lite, LITE. And this version is a very small box, which goes inside electric door opening controls. So you've all sort of faced the problems when you're going towards an electric door, and for somebody in a mobility scooter, they have to maneuver around into a position to try and press that stainless steel button with a wheelchair on it, and then move back quickly because the door is now going to hit them as it opens, and because it's opening inwards and it's by the side of the door frame, by the side of the door frame anyway. So this, again, the Smart Switch Lite does the same thing. So the button on your handlebars or near your joystick or your wheelchair allows you just to ride up towards the doors, press the button, doors open, and out you go. For a blind person, that same Smart Switch Lite allows them, as they're walking towards the doors, they will hear in their earpiece approaching electric doors. Their smart device detects that and automatically sends a signal back to the Smart Switch Lite in the controller to say open. So the doors then begin to open, and then a signal sent back to the visually impaired person to say electric doors opening inwards to the left. So they now know that the doors are opening inwards to the left, and then they can just walk through them instead of having to feel around both sides of the door frame to try and find where that button is to open the door or to grab the handle. It's done automatically for them before they approach it. So we're also developing a system on the mobility side of it called Smart Scooter. So Smart Scooter is an anti-collision system for mobility scooters. As we're working with a number of mobility groups, and one of them said to us, look, anybody can go and buy a mobility scooter off eBay for the granny for £100. Granny's never been shown how to ride it properly. The scooter's never been tested to see if it's roadworthy, and consequently they crash into people and objects and obstacles, and also fall off it. So if you can do something to stop that, then that would be fantastic. So
has that been fed back as a problem? And like I don't know that sort of market, or parts of the mobility marketplace is not one I'm in every day. But I've been driving my wheelchair 33 years, or a wheelchair for 33 years. But is that feedback that you've had then as a problem?
Yes, and it's from a big disability sort of group,
right?
Who actually have a charity arm, and they send mobility devices over to third world countries in container loads, second-hand ones as well.
Right.
So this was a particular problem, and you see it on the high street. People in mobility scooters shooting along 10 miles an hour or something like that.
Fast as well.
Yeah, very fast. And consequently, with the age group that tend to use mobility scooters, their reflexes can be a little bit impaired and slow. And so they aren't able to stop in time. So this system, it's a retrofit to existing mobility scooters, basically allows, it's a bubble of sensors at the front of the scooter. So as the scooter's riding along, It knows the speed that the scooter's traveling because it's got a clever sensing circuit in there to detect the speed. It also knows the stopping distance of that mobility scooter. And so therefore an algorithm within it, when it gets to 1.8 times the stopping distance of an object, when it detects an object in its path, it will say, warning, obstacle. They then have the ability or the opportunity to maneuver around that obstacle. If they don't maneuver around that obstacle in time, when it gets to 1.2 times the stopping distance, it automatically cuts off the power to the motor and stops the mobility scooter.
Yeah.
So pedestrians, and it detects them, it'll stop before it hits the back of the heels of a pedestrian.
Yeah.
If it's a bollard or something like that, it'll stop before it hits the bollard.
Yeah.
And we've also built an inclinometer into it, so when it gets to 15% tilt, it automatically again cuts off the power to the motor, because these mobility scooters, when you're driving along them at speed and you suddenly take a turning, because you've got they've got a very short, small wheelbase, high center of gravity, and they topple over. So this stops it toppling over. We've also built into there an immobilizing system, so it can be immobilized remotely. And a GPS tracking system, so it can be tracked if it gets stolen as well. So this is smart scooter for people with mobility issues. And
so does that have to be built into the product at the beginning, or can it be added onto the product?
No, it's a retrofit to existing mobility scooters that are out there. So it's a little small box on the front and one that goes sort of underneath where the main electronics is. And so it's a retrofit. We're also going to be talking to the manufacturers of some of these products with a view to having them installed.
Doing them in the beginning, And what do they, the retrofit ones, what do they retail at?
They're going to be around about 150 to 175 pounds.
Okay.
So that's very affordable to stop the damage to the, because you damage one and that's it, especially the price
of and things.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So that's about the price of it on the retail on that one.
Okay.
So that's the current ones for people with mobility issues that we.
And just one more question there, Steve. Was like I use my smartphone for everything, and there's a similar but different product on the market called Button from Neatbox. I know they do use sort of app technology as well. Is there any plan?
We've already got the app
you mentioned.
We've already got a version. It's already in the app anyway. So we've got that button there to control the smart switch and the smart switch units. So that's already in there.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so on to the next group.
You want to know you didn't ask the pricing of these. Again, extremely affordable for the smart button, retailing at £39. Which makes life so much easier getting to crossings and completely enhances people with mobility issues lives on there.
And how has it been selling to the infrastructure sort of organisations? Have they been very positive and well received with councils? Yes,
the local authorities are all extremely interested. All the ones we're talking in actually installing these in, and then suddenly we got COVID, which is the lockdown, which has put paid to a lot of things at the moment. But once they're coming again, then we'll be getting them in there. And we've also got a lot of interest from over in the States and places like that. These, which is good.
Cool.
Okay, so next disability group is for people with Parkinson's. So people with Parkinson's, they have trouble pressing buttons because their hands shake. And so again, for them to use push buttons at traffic lights or other buttons to enter and exit places, can be extremely awkward for them and embarrassing. So what we did, we created something called Smart Tube. So this is Smart Tube, which is a double-ended tube, so it's got a button on both ends. So basically, it's almost like a double sort of version of the smart button. So they just put the hands in the pocket. Doesn't matter where they grab it. They've always got a button by the thumb. So if it's the other way up, there's always a button by the thumb. So again, they can put the hand in the pocket, just press it, and it changes the traffic lights. Or they can use the smart shoe insoles and just walk onto the traffic lights, and it automatically changes it.
Even easier,
as well. So there's that. People with amputations or paralysis. So for somebody who's got amputations or no arms, for them to press a button is really awkward. So again, smart shoe in their insoles. They just walk onto it. It changes the traffic lights for them automatically. It saves any embarrassment or any trouble or having to ask somebody to press it for them and so on. So it does that. Next disability group is people with dementia. So people with dementia, early onset dementia and Alzheimer's, they sometimes have trouble remembering how to do things. So what we can do is have gentle reminders in there. So we've developed Smart Stick. So Smart Stick is a cane, and it's got a light which you can see on there when they press it. So at night time, it illuminates the area for them. Or they've got a flashing light on there. If they press and hold the button, you then get a panic alarm in case they feel threatened or something like that. We've got all the electronics in the base here. So we've got this unit at the base, which has got the 4 stabilizing pads to help sort of with stabilization when walking. And this has got all the electronics on it in it. So with an elderly person suffering from dementia, when they get to a traffic light or pedestrian crossing, they might forget how to cross a road properly. And they might get to the crossing, look left, and then just walk straight out in front of the traffic. The same sensors in the ground which actually tell visually impaired people warning curb edge or warning curb edge is now in the middle of the road, the same sensors for different disability groups can give different messages. So for an elderly person, when they approach the curb, instead of saying warning curb edge, to them it will say stop, please take care crossing, look right and left before you cross. So it just reminds them how to cross the road. Oh yeah, I've got to look right and look left, yeah. And that could save a life.
Yeah, definitely.
Walking out in front of a car, it could save a life. And the same, they can also wear a smart shoe as well in the shoes. And again, it will tell them, if they don't need a walking stick, it will tell them how to cross a road properly, or other information as required. We just need feedback from some of the disability groups for people with dementia as to what it is that's actually needed at the different positions. The same system can be used for people with learning difficulties. So for people with learning difficulties, they can have smart shoe in their insoles, and when they get to a crossing, it will say, stop, please take care crossing, look right and left before you cross. So remind them how to cross the road. The wayfinding side of it, so when they're walking down a road, it will tell them where they are. So they know, and they can sort of, know the way to get home and things like that. So for people with learning difficulties, that's extremely useful as well.
Brilliant. I mean, it's amazing because obviously the tech's out there and things have evolved and innovated so much the last few years. And I think it's a really clever way of adapting this technology for different parts of the disability community. It's obviously very heavily reliant on having the curb edges, having those beacons and the hardware, the infrastructure that you talked about. Obviously, if I was to go out and buy bits as a mobility impaired person, but my town doesn't have it, then there's not going to be that use. So, like at the moment, where is there the hardware that people would be able to interact with it?
We've got them around the Knowsley area, around Liverpool, in that area around Knowsley. But what we're going to be offering once this lockdown ends is 10 free smart switch units to local authorities to put them in traffic lights in their town centre area.
Right.
So these will be free of charge for them. So we just need the local authorities to contact.
Yeah, it's just to get the infrastructure there, isn't it?
Yeah. So we'll give them away free. Once they've seen them in use, then there'll be no turning back for them, because they'll know that this system really works. It works for all the different disability groups to assist them. And so we need your viewers to sort of contact their local authorities and say, look, we want this in. You can have them for free. You can have 10 free units and to fit into the traffic lights, and it takes about 15 minutes to fit them. They're very easy, very simple. So we're happy to give them to the local authorities to get that infrastructure out there so that people can start using these and benefiting from them. We've also got another sort of system. So on the Smart Shoe range, this is the blue one. The Smart Shoe is blue. We've got Smart Track, which is the green one, and Smart Track has a built-in tracking system. So again, for people who've got relatives, loved ones who are starting to suffer from dementia, they can have these insoles, which are tracking insoles, and track them where they are. So if they go off walkabout and they don't know where they are, and they can just look on an app on the app on the phone and actually see where they are and go out, and they can see where they've been. which again can prove invaluable for people who are in care homes, who may sort of walk about, or people living on their own independently who may sort of go walkabout. And with regards to the independent living, we're developing a system called Smart Home at the moment, which has a variety of sensors. It's a completely discrete system. It has sensors in the various rooms within somebody's home, and it allows people to be cared for in their own homes for longer than they would need to be before they go into a nursing home or a care home. And again, current crisis, care home, a lot of problems. People don't want to send their loved ones into some of the care homes at the moment. So this system will allow them to actually, it's got a AI, artificial intelligence built into it. So it tracks the different movement around the house of the parents, their loved ones, whoever it might be. And it learns their lifestyle. So if they normally get up between sort of 6:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning, and then they go out of the bedroom onto the landing, into the bathroom, spend 10 minutes in the bathroom, walk back out into the bedroom, then go back out and downstairs and so on. So it learns that. And if this is a daily pattern that the people do, when there's something outside the norm, so let's say, for instance, they don't get up and it's now 11 o'clock in the morning, and the alert has been set to say, 1 hour after the normal time, send a message, an alert. It'll do that to the carer or the loved one to actually let them know there's a problem. They've not got out of bed yet, so they can ring them, or they could go around and actually see what the issue is. Or if they go into the bathroom and they may have a fall, and they're normally only in there for 10 minutes, but sort of 10 minutes to half an hour. But if they've been in there for 45 minutes or an hour, if that's when the alert's set for, it will send a message to say they've been in the bathroom now for an hour. There's a possible problem. So again, they can go around to them and so on. So it tracks the lifestyle. So this allows them to be independent for longer, stay at home for longer before having to go into the care home. And if they have carers at home, so if they've got home care who come along and the carers are supposed to be there for 2 hours in the morning to get them up, get them dressed, get them bath, get the breakfast and so on, it logs when the carer arrives at the property. It logs when they leave. If they've only been there for 20 minutes, then they haven't done the job of what they should have been doing. So again, it's good peace of mind for their relatives to know that their loved ones are being looked after and cared for properly.
Yeah, I can see that's very useful. When you're talking about the tracker technology, I was sort of thinking, someone that's younger with smartphone, like, oh, well, that's in the smartphone. But when you talk about older people, but also, with dementia and learning disabilities, they maybe haven't necessarily got a smartphone, or if they go off somewhere, they might not have the smartphone on them. So obviously having it as a wearable technology is a way of overcoming that risk or that problem.
Yeah, and they don't even have to remember to put it on, really.
Yeah,
it's not like you have a necklace or say it's there, it's in the shoe. It's transferable from shoe to shoe. So you can take it out and take it out of the pair out of one pair of shoes and put them into another pair of shoes. Or you could have a couple of these. And this one here, this red one, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, did you, with the wearable stuff, did you consider other clothing items that it could be and decide that the sole was the sort of better way of having it adaptable?
We did, yes, because the other items of clothing quite often can get washed, or they wear different ones each day. So you may wear a different jacket or may not have a jacket on. You wear different jumpers, different shirts, and so on and so on. The one thing you tend to use is your shoes quite a lot. And either people can have them in the slippers or have them in the shoes as well, the normal pair of shoes that they wear. And so that's why we decided on the insole. And this particular one we've got, the red one, red for heat. So this is smart heat. So these ones, so again, plug-in charging at the back on this one, and it allows you to, and you can see it's now flashing the light on there. And this allows, you've got 3 different heat settings, so it's sequencing between the different ones. So you've got low, medium, and high heat. So somebody who might suffer from bad circulation or Raynaud's or something like that, they could have these in their insole, and it will warm the feet up and keep them warm. Also for sports as well, so people going skiing, workers who work outside in the cold. This is perfect for them as well. So there's a range of products and that we do. There's other ones currently under development, but I'll leave those for another time. We'll have another chat some other time when we bring some of those out. But again, they're life enhancing ones as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, it's an amazing array of products. And got a question from LinkedIn. It's Claire Kennelly, who has been on the show before and does a lot of work around business inclusion. She has a visual impairment and she lives in Ireland, just for a little bit of a context. But when we were talking about you offering some of the products to the councils for free, she asked this question: free for how long? So I guess it's that. Would those products be free forever, or would there be a time limit on those free ones?
Once we get them out free, well, a local authority will only get 10 free as a starter pack, if you know what I mean. We don't charge for them 10 again. They're free, we give them away free.
Yeah, that's forever in a way, those 10.
Yeah, so each new local authority that comes onto us, we will give them 10 free. And we'll just keep going until we've got the infrastructure, sort of the seed of the infrastructure out there. So Claire, good to hear from you. Please sort of contact your local authority and tell them that, look, we want this product in our town centre, in our area, and they're being offered for free by Smart Technology.
Brilliant. And then Peter, what's been the feedback from the groups you've spoke to about the products?
I'm very impressed. I mean, when I first saw it, it's going back well over a year now, and everyone in the group that I was with, they all went, wow, you know, because it answers so many problems, and we've introduced so many further assistance aids since then as well. So it's beyond belief, really. It's going to give us a new quality of life anyway, put it that way. Make us more independent. So I'm very excited by it, and I'm very excited to be part of it as well, because if it can help the people around me, then I feel accomplished. So
brilliant. No, thank you for that. I mean, obviously it does sound very reliant on getting that infrastructure out there, so it's got more use case and more impact for the lives that it's going to enhance and improve. But on that retail side, where can people go to buy these products? Is there one place? How are you retailing it?
We're going to be putting them out through the various main organisations and direct from ourselves. So the likes of the RNIB, Mobility UK, and people like that. So they're going to be going out through those, but people can also buy them direct from us. And so watch this space when people, if they make sort of inquiries, and say the key thing is let's get some infrastructure in first of all. Let's get the local authorities on board. That's what we need, because assistive technology devices are okay to a certain extent on their own as independent devices, but they've got limitations. So by using them in conjunction with infrastructure in there as well, it can make things sort of completely different. And to give you an example on the wayfinding, I've got some sensors here, and if you don't mind, I'll just give you a little example on it. So imagine, I mean, for those who are visually impaired, they don't have to imagine, they know what it's like, but imagine yourself, Martin, if you were sort of visually impaired, if you're blind and you had to go to a railway station to catch a train from platform 4 at a railway station, you walk through the doors, the entrance to the railway station, what would you do?
It'd be pretty difficult, wouldn't it, to know if you've got to go over the railway track and get to lifts or stairs, and it's a nightmare.
Exactly, you haven't got a clue where you're going, really, have you? So this is the sort of thing that can happen with our system. So I've got a smart shoe here. I'm just passing it by one of the sensors. Oops, have I still switched this on? I think I'll need to turn the speaker back on. I turned it off before because it was hissing. So if you just bear with me a second, you can talk to Peter for a second if you want while I turn the speaker back on.
Yeah, but I guess you can answer that question, Peter, that we're just talking about, right? I mean, it must be very, sort of anxiety provoking of not knowing how to go find the right platform.
The worst thing is buses. Well, for me anyway, because I cannot see where a bus is going.
Yeah.
So can't even see if there's a bus there, for it's virtually on top of me. So if you don't put your hand out, lots of the buses just simply don't stop.
1 to 10 straight ahead.
We're bringing in technology which will help that as well, which Steve can tell you about some other time if you wish.
Sure.
Which is going to be a godsend. It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, I've switched the speaker back on, so we're all active now. So somebody, when they walk through into a railway station for the first time, this is what they can hear.
Welcome to Preston Station. The ticket office is on your right, automated ticket machines on your left, and platforms 1 to 10 straight ahead.
So straight away, they've got a visual awareness of the surroundings. They know the ticket office is on the right, the automated ticket machines are on the left, and platforms 1 to 10 straight ahead. So they go into platform 4, so they start walking straight ahead, and then they hear
underpass to platforms 1 to 4 on your left, platforms 5 to 10 and cafe straight ahead.
Again, they know the underpass to platforms 1 to 4 is on your left, or straight ahead to 5 to 10 of the cafe. So they turn left towards the underpass, then they hear
warning, steps to underpass for platforms 1 to 4. There are 15 steps to the bottom.
So again, they now know that there's some steps going down. They know how many steps there are, so they can count the steps going down. They start walking through the underpass, then they hear
steps to platforms 1 and 2 are on your left.
They're going to platform 4, so they ignore that and keep walking. Then they hear
steps to platforms 3 and 4 are on your right.
So they turn right because that's the platform they want. Then they hear
warning, steps to platforms 3 and 4. There are 15 steps to the top. Platform 3 is on your left and platform 4 is on your right.
So they now know to count 15 steps going up and turn right towards platform 4. They walk ahead and then they hear
warning, platform edge.
They know the tracks are in front of them. So they turn left and start walking down the platform. Then they hear
notification, seating is on your left.
So now know there's seats, so they can sit down in some seats if they like. Or
notification, gents toilets are on your left.
Or
notification, food kiosk on your left.
So how much more life enhancing is that?
Yeah.
To almost have somebody sat on your shoulder talking to you as you're walking along.
That's amazing.
So this is what our wayfinding service can do.
And so how's that information fed into the system?
So we can have sensor strips down, which is literally a painted strip down, or our smart beacons as well.
Oh yeah. So like the kiosk would have a beacon that would say that it is a kiosk, that it is a restaurant.
Yeah, so you know that it's there. Yeah. So Peter, just bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to grab something else. Peter, just talk.
Yeah, go on. Sorry about this, Martin.
It's amazing the amount of different products and different solutions that are here. It's fascinating.
Tremendous.
Yeah, and as Peter mentioned earlier, we're also working on a system which has got real-time traffic information in it as well. So when somebody gets to a bus stop, somebody who's visually impaired goes to a bus stop, in their earpiece it will say, John Street bus stop, the 125 and 246 to Preston, stop here. The 125 to Preston is due in 5 minutes. So it will tell them again when the trains are, the buses are due.
And that information's always on a bus stop anyway, isn't it? Like the actual info's there. It's just getting it in a different format.
It is. So we're able to extract it, yes, to actually give that audible information to somebody who's visually impaired. And a final sort of products as well. Well, not final, but another product I'll mention before we go is for in electric cars and also in trams. So we have a transmission beacon for those, which is a long range, or narrow beam long range beacon, which when electric vehicles approach, and this is if we can get the electric vehicle manufacturers to work with us on this, costs a few pennies for them, really. You know, it's very low cost, a couple of pounds for them to fit them in all the electric cars they manufacture, but it will transmit a signal saying, warning, electric vehicle approaching, warning, electric vehicle approaching. Right. Because for somebody who's visually impaired, they can't hear.
I read about that, yeah.
So just walk out in the street, they listen and think, oh, there's no cars coming. Walk out to the street and bang, they get hit by a car.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a visual impairment, but when I'm crossing a road, to look left and right, I have to turn the whole chair because I can't turn my head. And so that I very often use, I realize my hearing is quite heightened because I'm listening for the engine of a car. So it's the same sort of thing as well.
Yes, yeah, and the same with trams as well. Again, trams are quite, and people don't necessarily know because the tram tracks are flush with the ground, and they don't necessarily know if they're walking on a tram track or walking across it. So again, it will warn them if a tram is approaching. So watch the space for more products. We'll give you details sort of.
Sure. We've got a question from Paul saying, when does the station information get updated following any changes in configuration, and who is responsible for keeping this up to date?
Thanks, Paul, for that question. So the information depends on what information it is. If it's the traffic, the real-time traffic information, that is, as it says, real-time. So that's updated automatically by the if it's the bus company or the train company or something like that. With regards to the wayfinding side of it, we can remotely change the message given by the sensors and the beacons. So if the train station decides that they're going to change whatever, so the food kiosk disappears or they replace it with the news agents or whatever it might be, that is just a matter of us just going onto the server. Takes all of sort of 1 minute to do, and then that message is then updated to every user out in the country of that. They may never use that train station, but every user gets the update of that information. So it now say news agents on your left instead of food kiosk on your left, and so on.
Great.
So I hope that answers the question for you there, Paul.
Yeah, that does for me. It's helped clear it up. No, it's fantastic. Well, we're coming to the end of the chat. As I said, it always does fly by this hour or so. But amazing. Well done, guys, for the innovation. And I think the sort of what really hits me is you've listened to what disabled people need, and then you've taken the variety of the toolkit of technologies that are available, but brought that into a really powerful solution. So I think, what I took away, the big call to action is to get the infrastructure side built out with the councils. But lots of opportunities there as well.
Yeah, and it's very affordable for the councils. I'll not give the prices for them. They can talk to us about that, but it's extremely affordable. What we wanted to do is, obviously we're going to make a profit on these, but we want to help because we're in business, not a hobby. But we want to help people with disabilities lead as normal lives as possible. And one of our strap lines is enhancing lives by innovation. And that's what we do. We enhance people's lives by innovative solutions.
Yeah, and the fact there's like the life aspect is, that from a local authority budget perspective, it's a no-brainer if it's health and safety enhancing. But then also the fact that it's just making things a lot less stressful, a lot more independent, and like that you can't measure the cost on that, but it's so impactful for disabled people. So be exciting to see how things develop and grow in the coming months and years for you all.
Thank you.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, guys, on the show. Is there anything like last minute you wanted to mention, or have you covered everything that you wanted to?
Just the website, really.
Yeah, one thing from my point of view on the technology side of it, Martin, is if people out there who have different disabilities have particular problems that they're faced with, please, by all means, drop us a line. Our website is smart-technology.org.uk. So that's smart-technology.org.uk. And please drop us a line on the contact us page there. Tell us the problems you face. We love problems. We're solution finders. So we love coming up with solutions to problems. Some people like crosswords, some people like Sudoku. We like real problems and we like solving them. So please come back to us.
And I mentioned my good friend and colleague earlier, Gavin at Neatbox. He said it's great to have others in this sector proving what's possible. Well done, Smart Grid team. So if you haven't connected, it'd be nice to have a chat about the common solutions you're bringing to disabled people anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Gavin, for your kind comment. Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys. Well, everyone for watching. Thanks for joining and the comments and questions. It's always great to have that interactivity. Thanks again to Peter and Steve for your time and your passion and energy today. And I'll be back tomorrow for the next episode of the Daily Sib, and I'll catch up with Peter and Steve again soon.
Thank you, Martin.
Bye, Martin.
Cheers then. Bye.